So this workshop is going to be on the multicam switcher by Zyzyl. A lot of the community has been asking for this, and thankfully, thank you, Zyzyl. He is going to be leading this workshop, giving sort of a lecture type of thing on the switcher cam. And we'll be streaming it on Twitch. It'll be uploaded to YouTube later. And the documenters for this specific workshop are Carlos, Digitally Wired, and Zelha. And I thank you and thank them very much. And now I would like to thank the edu-sci community for bringing this together, for Nanotopia for suggesting this workshop. And now, Zyzyl, if you would, please.
Hey, hello. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. Can somebody just wave if you can hear me well? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Yes, thank you. This is the multicam switcher tool that I made to help out with some of people's streaming or recording workflows. I'm not planning for this to be a super long lecture. I think generally people will learn much better by practicing and doing themselves. So I'll talk for a few minutes, show you the basic functions of how the switcher works behind me, and then I'll distribute the public folder that has it in it, and you can all try spawning out versions either in this world or you can practice in another world. I'll be around for at least an hour or two, and if you've got questions, we can discuss it, and that's how I'm planning on it going. If you have questions while I'm talking, just maybe raise a hand or wave at me or interrupt by putting subs in shout mode, and that's perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. Right, so for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Zyzyl or Zyzyl, whichever you prefer. I'm originally from the UK, which you can probably hear. And I've been part of the first Neos and now Resonite communities for about 4.5 years now, I guess. And back in, what would it have been, late 2021, around Christmas time, Medra introduced me to Jason Moore, who is the director and leader of the Meta movie. And at the time, Jason was wanting to improve and build on their streaming process that they had for the Meta movie. And he had experience in editing, and as part of that, often the workflow people would have is that there would be a bunch of different camera feeds, and then somebody would be sitting at a switcher box and they would be able to switch between them. Carlos Austin, who is doing the filming for us today, has a lot of experience doing that. He might be able to give out some tips while we're practicing later. To produce this thing, because the problem with one of the downsides of the built-in Resonite streamer camera is that you can have multiple different camera angles. You could maybe have lots of different users that you could switch to and take the POV of, but it's difficult to know what kind of shot you will get before you make the switch. And so the goal was to have a setup where you could pre-arrange all of your camera points, as you would, for example, if you're filming a TV show, and then your dedicated director or streamer would be able to essentially direct the show and switch between the viewpoints as you go along. So the idea is that when you spawn the switcher out, it looks very much like this. It has a few different kind of canvas in the middle. Here is where you would see any preview viewpoints. So for example, if I create a new static viewpoint, so this is one which is just hovering in space, you can see that, firstly, this is gigantic. I didn't expect that, but hey ho. I can position this anywhere in space. And then if I want to, I can press mirror to display, much like you would with the Resonite streamer camera, and check the desktop window of my Resonite. It is showing my POV. And if I select that static camera, I'm now basically streaming to my own desktop. You can't see this, of course, but I'm streaming that static viewpoint. So you can, much the same way as you would with the streamer camera, you want to press mirror to display, and then you are streaming. When you have a viewpoint selected, here you'll see it outlined in purple. And then this settings menu will show up. I can bring that a bit closer for everyone to have a look. And that gives you different things you can change and tweak for that particular viewpoint. I'll pop that back so Carlos can show it on camera. There we go, and then it snaps back if you want to. There are 4 different types of viewpoint that you can make here. So we've got the static cameras like this one here. For example, I can take a first-person viewpoint. So this would be a POV. So any of the 3 user viewpoint types, you'll be presented with a username entry. So for example, if I wanted to do one for myself, I could type in Zyzyl, and then it will show that it has matched me. What I can do is if I put that camera and on show switcher to camera, then you will be able to see up here what's going on there. And if I create that viewpoint, now we have a viewpoint which is looking through my eyes, a smooth POV, much like you would get from the built-in Resonite streamer camera. We can also do third-person viewpoints, pinned cams. So for example, that one there, this will, as it sets up, zoom in, try and find me in the world.
Zyzyl?
Hi.
Yeah, hi. You've referred to the built-in streaming camera several times.
Yes.
I don't know how that works, so sometimes
okay.
maybe you have to go a little more into the explanation.
Oh, well, you do not need to know how that works for the switcher. So if you're not familiar with that, then that is not a problem. An old build of the switcher worked by having people anchor the Resonite streamer camera to it and then move around. But the new version of the switcher that I've built recently, which I'm showing off here, you don't need to know anything about the Resonite streaming camera. So in fact, you're all good. Nano? Was that a wave or just a cheer? Right, got it. So you can produce these front viewpoints, and also if you wanted to, you could do a front as well. If you want more like the over the head, over the shoulders viewpoint that you would have if you're playing a third-person shooter, for example, and you can make tweaks to all these positions. So for example, if I select this back view of mine, I can now, let's say, I can zoom out a bit, rotate around slightly. I can move the position up or down. It's got quite a lot of smoothing, so it takes a while to react. Want to reduce the amount of smoothing. There you go. You can see it's now following me much more closely. I would say for these positions particularly, the smoothing is important to avoid viewers getting a bit sick when you're watching people do this. There are a few options here. So for example, down here at the bottom, there is an option to show a grid over the viewpoint. This was requested by Carlos when we first started working on this because he really likes having this grid, what would be called a rule of thirds grid. It can help you with your composition if you'd like to use the tool for that. But you can choose either to have it or not to have it. And as you will notice, over each of these, there is a Save as Defaults button. So for example, if you find that you want to use pretty much the same set of settings every single time for, let's say, a first-person smooth POV, third-person pin cam, what you can do is you can click on Save as Defaults, and then that will save those values to a cloud variable. And then anytime you spawn the switcher out, if you make a specific viewpoint of a specific type, then it will have those new default values. I set this up like this so that I can distribute one version of the switcher and then everyone can customize it to their liking with the build of the switcher with different defaults for each individual person. Okay, so some of the other features. So you can see now that this we've got 5 viewpoints, and if I try creating one more, then this will just add an extra row here. So some of the other bits of UI. So this is the kind of previews bit here in the middle. The bit at the bottom I call the toolbar, and this has a few useful settings. So the switcher can be quite a heavy tool to have out. Themselves, each time you have a new camera, it has to be rendering a chunk of the world. So I'm actually going to delete a bunch of these to save on people's frame rates a bit. Actually, maybe have one up so you can see the differences. There we go. So in order to save resources on your machine, you can use the settings down here. So for example, you can turn down the preview frame rates, and you will see now that the very stuttery, more like a slideshow, less like a nice smooth video. So it's up to you to figure out where the right balance will be for you in terms of performance cost versus quality of your preview. I'll put that back to a medium. And then similarly on the resolution, if I turn this down low, you'll see that the previews become, or at least you'll experience for yourselves, that the previews become really pixelated. And again, that's a trade-off. The quality that you need from your previews versus the like computing resources you've got available to you. Note that these don't affect the output that you see on your stream. So don't worry that if you reduce the quality here, you're going to be reducing the quality for your stream viewers. That's all fine. Now you can imagine if you set a bunch of viewpoints up in a world, you might want to save them and reload them again at some later time. For example, if you have a world where you have a consistent set of positions, if you're doing, let's say, a podcast and you always want a certain set of camera points lined up, then what you can do is you can press the Save Data button over here. And if you save that, it will, let me make this bigger for everyone, create a piece of UI which has some information about the world that this was working in, the number of viewpoints that are saved, the time and date as well, and you can rename it should you want to. You can save this to your inventory, and then if you delete the switcher and then bring the switcher out again, you can use this to immediately load up all of the viewpoints you had exactly as they were. And the way you would do this is you grab your piece of saved data, and then you can either overload data and drag and drop like that, and you'll see it created copies of the viewpoints that were already there. Or you can hold it and click on load data with your other laser, and it will do the same thing. And that can also be, for most functions on the switcher, you can use the built-in Resonite undo and redo menu. So for example, if I wanted to undo those viewpoint loads, I can just and reload, redo, undo, redo, etc. Let's see what else. Oh yeah. So once you have produced or got a bunch of viewpoints here, you might find that you want to reorder them. So that's where the little buttons up the top here. So most viewpoints, each viewpoint will have 2 buttons. So one which will shift it left. So I'm going to click the shift left on the selected front view, boom, like that. And you can see it moves it 1 point to the left. I can undo that. Equally, if I want to move them further, so for example, I wanted to move this static viewpoint on the left here, what I can do is I can grab that and over the position I want it to be, and you'll see that it just moves like that. And again, I can undo that if I want to. So if you've got a big grid of viewpoints, just to arrange them for yourselves. Let's see. Okay. Then the last bits of this that I haven't talked about. So we have at the top, this is the output. This will tell you if, basically this shows you what you should be streaming to your desktop, the view you're seeing there. Let me anchor it back up the top like that. So it can also show some warning text. For example, I unchecked mirror to display, and this is now warning me that I'm not mirroring to my display, meaning that the stream would not be seeing what I want them to see. And it also tells me that I have no viewpoint selected. So to get rid of those 2 warnings, I would select a viewpoint and then click mirror to display and get the output that I want. Is that a hand up, Mystery Emery? No. Yeah. Do you want to go into shout mode? Then we can hear you. Oh, you're all good? Okay. Right. I think the last... Okay, so and then on the left, well, yeah, my left anyway, here we have some additional settings. I can pull those out and show you. I can scale it up a bit as well. Sorry, Carlos, I'll put it back where it was in a moment so you can get a camera picture.
Okay, so a quick question was, because I'm following along a multi-cam shoot. Are we looking at 2 camera angles right now? Because for an example, I really would love to see 3 camera angles. Right now I'm seeing one screen that's just blank up there and then one that's an object. So as far as moving from a reference, that to me could be amazing if we could just be looking at
Sure.
like a 3 camera angle shoot. Thank you so much.
And then let me put a first, you know what, I will do a third person front view on you. So your name was Mr. Was it Miss? There we go. Boom. And now that will zoom in on the world origin, and it will settle right in front of you. So yeah, so for example, now what I can do is I can simply just click on, let's say I want this a static viewpoint, and I can rename this. So if I call this static viewpoint audience to remind me what it should be showing, then I can click it, and now it's streaming that view. Oh, that was a bit of a lag spike there. Then again, I can click on Mystery Amory, and I'm seeing you. And if I want to tweak how this works, for example, if I want to zoom out a bit, we can zoom out. I can shift the height, or I can shift the framing. So let's say I want to do that. Or, and you, if you're in shout mode still, Mystery, you should be able to tell us if you are seeing a little live indicator in the bottom right corner of your screen. Is that correct?
I do see a live indicator, yes.
You do. Okay. So that is this show tally light setting. So if I turn that off, it will disappear again. And if I turn it on, you can turn that on. So that is something you can set for each individual viewpoint. So if you imagine that you are doing a show where you have, like, for example, where we always have some trained actors on the cast, and we have also some paying guests who are part of it. For the actors and the cast, we will generally want to have the tally light on, or for our camera operators, one of whom we've got flying around today, they will generally want to have the tally light, but for the guests, they would not want to have it. So it's something that you want to be able to toggle for each individual viewpoint. Okay, and then, so going back to the switcher settings, again, Carlos, I'll pop it back for you in a moment. This has a bunch of things. So for example, I can set, so currently the switcher visibility up the top is set to everyone, but I can toggle it back to only owner, and now only I can see it. So this is the state that it would normally be in if you are filming for a show, because normally you don't want to have everyone else having to render all of those camera viewpoints. So if I put that back on, currently you will see if I turn the static camera around, you can see that the switcher is showing up on the preview cameras. And let me just check my desktop. Yeah, the switcher is indeed showing up on my desktop as well. If you toggle that off, which is probably the state you will want it in normally, the switcher is now invisible. So you can stream without worrying that people are going to see your preview showing up. UI interactions. So these are to set whether other people can interact with the buttons on the switcher or with these static viewpoint visuals. Generally, those will probably want to be only owner, and the switcher will always go on with that. You know, there might be situations where you're demonstrating it to somebody else and you want them to be able to play with the controls as well. So I just put those there for people to try. The other ones, I'm just going to put this back here so Carlos can actually get it on screen. Where's the little snap point? Okay, I need to make it easier to use. No, all right, sorry, it doesn't want to snap. Oh, there we go. Okay. Then there's a previews per row setting, so I can then change how my switcher will work like that. I can change the preview scale relative to everything else. I can undo that. I can toggle whether the output monitor is shown. The reconnect countdown. So that shows you if somebody leaves the world and then comes back, you will see a countdown on the viewpoint once they come back in. And if somebody leaves the world, then any cameras associated with them will freeze in their position where that person was, and then it'll give you time to switch off that viewpoint onto another one. So that should be okay. Then right at the bottom, you can also select your output resolution, or you can even put in a custom one if, for example, you want to film in a tall resolution or a square one or aspect ratio. Then once you have your switcher set up, just before you start filming, I would generally suggest that people tick this pin to user button. So if I do that, then it will now follow me around the world as I move. Sorry, I've just disrupted all of your viewpoints, Carlos. And then also editing button, and that gets rid of most of the editing functions on the switcher. I'm going to unpin it for myself so that you don't accidentally misclick and close up one of your viewpoints that you were meaning to switch to instead. Once you're done at the end of the filming, I would suggest you should not be saving the switcher into worlds. That will. Instead, what you will want to do is to make sure that you unlock editing, click on the save data, and then save this little information for you, and then you can always just rebuild the switcher exactly as it was using that piece of information. Right. Any questions at this point? Or I distribute the public folder, and you can all give this a try yourselves.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks. Okay, so the public folder where you will find this is, if I can find it in my own inventory, this one here. Make it nice and big for you. I'll pop that into the audience area. You can save that. I will make a post in the Resonite Discord server at some point in the next few days as well. So this will be accessible, but feel free to share around other people. I'm more than happy to take any feedback. If you notice any bugs with this, please let me know. Again, I'll make a post in the user creations forum in the Resonite server for it. I can't promise that I will find the time to make any additions or take on board any suggestions, but I'm always happy to hear them anyway. Sometimes a suggestion will come through and it will take me a year to put it in, but it might make more sense to add it when I'm doing some other features as well. I'm also helping to develop the next meta movie, so I have quite a lot on my plate, but I'm always happy to hear ideas and to hear stories from people using it, to hear what your pain points are. So inside that public folder, in addition to the switcher, which you'll find in the root of the folder, you'll also find a documentation PDF, which you can spawn out, and I'll make a link to the Google Doc as well. So this has information on how the switcher works. You can spawn that into Resonite and look through it. It's more of a reference, but if I just go through to so the quick start is probably, for someone who roughly knows what they're doing, the quick start is, I guess, your recipe, I suppose, for setting up the switcher and getting the viewpoints you want. And the other thing you'll find in there is the license. So I've decided to license this under the Creative Commons attribution license. What that means basically is you are free to use this switcher for any project. You are free to modify it, to redistribute it. And the only requirement, and you can do that all for free, you don't have to pay me anything for it. The only requirement is that I ask you to give some reasonable attribution. So for example, if you use this to produce a video, you can add in the description that you use the multicam switcher tool by me, or you could put a credits at the end or the intro, or you could say, thanks to Zyzyl for making the tool we use this for. I mention this not because I'm trying to build up my ego or trying to build up a huge following or anything. It's mostly so that if people see it and they like the way that you filmed it, it's to make it easier for them to find the tools. That's really my motivation for asking for that. So that's the only restriction, only requirement if you're going to use this. So wonderful films, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone makes. Yeah, that's the one thing we haven't quite solved in the metaverse is, I guess jazz hands does the trick, but doesn't have quite the same impact. Okay, so I guess at this point, with Miss Molly's go ahead, we can probably move people's permissions to the point that they can spawn things in here. And I guess we can all test out the switcher. I would recommend keeping the switcher so that only you can see it. That will be the default when it spawns out, so that we don't have people having to render a million different cameras and destroying their GPUs. If you want some help, then maybe what you could do is reduce down to the minimum number of viewpoints, and then you can make it visible to everyone and grab one of us to get some help. Or if you have a world that you really like and you would like to practice setting up your viewpoints, you could always set up your own version of that world and invite one of us over to get some help. We've got a few people with Switcher experience. So we've got Projectivity in the crowd. I not very experienced using it, but I know how it works. And of course, we've got Carlos, who's streaming, and Nano has done a bit as well. So we've got a few people with some idea of how this works. Great. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Zyzyl. This has been absolutely amazing. And yes, so we can absolutely do some breakout rooms, and there are many options for these breakout rooms, both in the hub on the World Orbs floor, if you would like to look around there. And yeah, so I can help out with this, Zyzyl, everybody that you mentioned before. And this will be uploaded to YouTube as well a little bit later. So feel free to check that out as well. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This has been amazing. Thank you, Digitally Wired. Thank you, Zelha. Thank you, both of you.
Yeah, and I highly recommend that while you have Projectivity and Carlos here, and ask them for some help.
Yeah, no, I mean, Carlos has years of experience doing this in real life. So he can give you lots of tips probably on shot placement and how to do all of that. He also has been filming and streaming the Meta movie for, how long, Carlos? Is it, I guess, 2 years at least? So he has plenty of experience doing live switching in VR in a very dynamic, chaotic environment. So I would say I would hazard to say he's the most experienced person doing camera switching in VR in the world. So a very good person to talk to if you have any questions or any desire to do this for yourselves.